Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Mason. I'm your worship associate for today. Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Church of Plano, Texas. Our pianist today is Elena Westbrook, which everyone knows. And as a reminder to you, please place your cell phones in worship mode. And also, as a reminder, as most everyone knows, there is a book in the back underneath the audio-video booth. And you can share any joys or concerns that you may have, and we'll share them a bit later in the service. So if you find yourself reflecting on a specific joy or a sorrow, sometimes sharing can amplify your happiness, and sometimes sharing can lighten your load. As Unitarian Universalists, you can bring your whole self, your full identity, your questioning mind, your loving and giving heart. We join together on a journey that honors all of our individual backgrounds and experiences. Thanks to each of you for traveling together on this journey. We're honored today to have Cameron Young as our guest speaker. Cameron is a lifelong Texan and UU who has served on congregational life staff for the southern region of the UUA since 2019. Prior to joining the UUA, Cameron served as a lifespan religious educator in Fort Worth for 5 years. Cameron has a Bachelor of Music degree from Louisiana State University and a Master of Divinity at Bright Divinity School, where they are a recipient of the Sexual and Gender Justice Certificate and the prestigious Walker Preaching Scholarship. Cameron is a professional musician, and you'll get to hear some of that later, and a classically trained singer. Cameron has performed in numerous operas and many other musicals. Cameron is a member and co-founder of DFW's Uptown Carolers and recorded with Grammy Award winner Leon Bridges. You might want to Google Leon. He's kind of a talented guy, too. Cameron is an avid traveler, a diehard fan of DFW sports teams, and a devoted coffee drinker. See? Yeah. Cameron's pronouns are they, them. Please welcome Cameron Young.
Good morning. So, for those gathered here in person and digitally, for those people of our past and present who have shaped us, and for those yet to come, for the spirit of the great beyond, let us rejoice in this holy communion we call life and worship together.
Cameron was kind enough to offer a reading for us this morning. It's titled On Teaching by Khalil Gibran. Then said a teacher, "Speak to us of teaching." And he said, "No one can reveal to you anything but that which already lies half asleep in the dawning of your knowledge. The teacher who walks in the shadow of the temple among their followers gives not their wisdom, but rather of their faith and lovingness. If they are indeed wise, they do not bid you enter the house of their wisdom, but rather lead you to the threshold of your own mind. The astronomer may speak to you of their understanding of space, but they cannot give you their understanding. The musician may sing to you of the rhythm which is in all space, but they cannot give you the ear which arrests the rhythm, nor the voice that echoes it. And those who are versed in the science of numbers can tell you of the regions of weight and measure, but cannot conduct you toward them. For the vision of one lends not its wings to another, and even as each one of you stands alone in God's knowledge, so must each of you each one of you be alone in your knowledge of God and in God's understanding of the earth. Blessed be.
I'm loving the energy in this room today. I think we're all a little antsy because it's spring and, the weather's getting good and the sunlight, it's giving us energy. And I'm here for it. So as Steve mentioned, my name's Cameron Young. I come to you from the Southern Region staff of our Unitarian Universalist Association. And many of you have worked with our staff on various things. We are essentially your built-in support infrastructure for your congregations and the 280 some others in the rest of the Southern region. We are part of a vast network of Unitarian Universalists, of liberally religious people. So, little story first. When I was a religious educator in a congregation a few years ago, many years ago, we had this high energy kid who couldn't sit still in Sunday school classes or in worship. So we were okay with him kind of wandering the hallways. There were enough adults around so we could keep it, a container for safety. And I just remember one Sunday morning, he walks into my office as I'm sitting there at my desk, and he sees this wooden Buddha statue that's right on my desk, and it was one of my favorite statues. And he sees it and then goes, that looks like a boy and a girl. So essentially what this 8-year-old child told me is what many adults in our society still haven't figured out, right? He told me 3 things. 1, the gender binary is a social construct. 2, we all have masculine and feminine traits within our souls as humans. And 3, the ability to reconcile those traits is actually a sign of spiritual enlightenment. And I'm not looking too deeply into this. The expression this kid had, the words that came out, the way he got excitable about it, it just told me that he got it. So I want to do a little visualization with you all. So humor me for a second. If you can get comfortable, close your eyes, take a deep breath if that helps you. I want you to think about one of your earliest memories in community. Doesn't have to be positive or negative, or it could be either. But what were the first things and the most prevalent things that you noticed about that community? Sights, smells, people. Now, I'd like for you to do the same thing for the first time you stepped foot in this community. For some of you, that might be today, so it's easy to recall. For some of you, that might have been 40 years ago. What were the first things you noticed? Your immediate impressions. So, I'd be curious to know what you all came up with, but I'd wager there were some key differences in your current memories of this community and the early childhood memories you were calling upon, at least many of you. Some of you, this may be your earliest memory of community. And I'd wager there were some differences not only about the communities themselves, but also what you immediately noticed. You might notice different things as an adult versus what you noticed as a child, what sticks out to you. And it's always important to remember that people of different ages, cultural backgrounds, abilities will notice things that you might not even give a second thought to. I think about taking my mom to a clothing store that I myself frequented. And my mom's in a wheelchair, so I noticed something I'd never noticed before, was that her wheelchair couldn't fit in between the clothing aisles, in between the clothing racks. The implicit message of that being essentially her own invisibility. So it's important to see your community through the lenses of multiple people. Put yourself in their shoes, and what sticks out to you through that lens. These unspoken messages, some positive, some negative, some neutral, exist in every community and institution. They comprise what religious education scholar Maria Harris refers to as the implicit curriculum. Now, unlike the explicit curriculum, which in church are the words we say, the words in our hymns, the literal curricula we teach in our RE classes, and even our bylaws, the implicit curriculum are the messages behind the messages, some of which can even contradict the explicit curriculum. They are how we teach without words what our faith and what our churches are about. Harris offers examples of implicit curriculum in churches as things like attitudes, time spent, even the design of a room, things like presence or absence of teenagers in our parish councils, or things like percentage of church revenues we give or don't give to the less fortunate. In other words, as we say in UU spaces, deeds, not creeds. So a while back, when I had mentioned to someone I worked in Unitarian Universalism, they replied, "Isn't that just a bunch of college professors talking about nuclear disarmament?" Honestly, I appreciated the bluntness, but that was what the implied message that person had gotten from one visit many, many years ago to a UU congregation. Implicit messages matter. A while back when I had, implicit curriculum is especially important when we're speaking of young children. Now, they may not be able to internalize all the abstract messages said from the pulpit or even in Sunday school, but like that high-energy kid who loved my Buddha statue, they received our faith teachings in so many other ways. Now, scholar Chap Clark says, famously, faith is not taught, it's, anybody? Caught. Our churches, along with a bevy of other traditions, have reached an impasse in the wake of the pandemic. We've long said the dominant models of church, especially Sunday school, are dated. They are rooted in structures from the 1950s when most households had one working parent, and faith institutions had an endless volunteer pool. Churches didn't have to compete with the vast amount of entities vying for the attention of adults and children alike, whether that be school extracurriculars, academics, or multiple jobs, because let's face it, you either have to have multiple jobs or multiple degrees or sometimes all of the above to make ends meet like you could in the 50s with less. They also have to compete with digital communities and social media platforms. Churches were the epicenters of communities, and that's no longer the case. The trends have long pointed towards such models being unsustainable, and the effects of the pandemic on churches harshly illuminated that truth. And so many of our congregations are left feeling like failures because they don't have the resources to sustain the unsustainable programs they think are necessary to retain the kids. But they're not failures. There's good news. While I never want to diminish the importance of good religious education programming, it is not the most essential piece in welcoming and keeping children and youth. the single biggest predictor of whether or not a young person will remain in the faith of their childhood. According to the Pew Research Center, it's if that child or youth had 5 healthy relationships with adults in the congregation who are not their parents or not members of their immediate family. So it's not a flashy RE program. It's not youth conferences. It's not even the presence of other children and youth. It's welcoming adults. It's relationship. And ideally, you want religious education to be a container for such relationships, but it can't be the only one, especially if attendance is inconsistent and if the children's only Sunday school teachers are their own parents. Relationship is the single most important piece of the implied curriculum. That certainly rings true for me. I was a youth in this faith. When I went off to college, so did most of my peers. So what was significant for me was to have a faith community to come home to, where people knew my name and cared about me. Those who may say they don't believe in organized religion or that it has become irrelevant miss one crucial thing among others, and that is the church's capacity for intergenerational community. Children are less likely now to have grandparents active in their lives, either because they don't live in the same place, or people are waiting longer to have children, so the age gaps are more palpable. The infrastructure to surround a child with loving elders who foster shared values generally does not exist in other nonprofits or social justice movements or like institutions. The question we must ask ourselves then is, are the elders ready? Are you ready as elders? To determine that, we need to think about the implied curriculum. Though you may have identified differences in what you notice first about a community between now and your childhood, I guarantee every person coming through this door on a Sunday for the first time is asking themselves the same 3 questions, whether consciously or unconsciously. Am I safe here? Am I welcome here? And can I trust these people? This is always the starting point to anyone who gets introduced to a faith, regardless of age or background. It may seem obvious, but it's easy to lose sight of for those of us who have been around UU churches for some time. What are the very first impressions a newcomer from Community UU will receive about Community UU? What are the implicit messages a child might receive when they first enter? Will they be greeted by friendly adults eager to learn their name and speak with them on their level? Will they be welcomed and incorporated into worship, even if they may be a bit high energy and chatty? Will church events and small groups be inclusive of families with young children? Meaning, are they invited? Are there activities? Are there child care support? Are they at reasonable times for young families? All things to consider. Finally, and this is not just important to young people, but to all newcomers to Unitarian Universalism. How do we show what's at the core of our shared faith without using words? The 7 principles are great, so are the new values. But how exactly do we transmit the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and society at large, or even justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity to a 2-year-old? That, my friends, is why we agree to put love at the center. Love is now at the center of our explicit curriculum because we say it We say we have love at the center, and therefore we make the promise to live into that as part of our implied curriculum. We as a tradition have long held value in reason, empiricism, and logic, products of the Enlightenment era where Unitarianism and Universalism experienced American Renaissances. Now, these things are all important, but they're not enough to save us. And they're not readily accessible to everyone. Children, on the other hand, are blessed with this divine gift of intuition, knowing things even when they can't always readily articulate it. That's why the teaching without words is so important. A child's intuition, which is asking them, am I safe here? Am I welcome here? Can I trust these people? Will tell them, that intuition will tell them very quickly if a community is embodying love at the center. So, my friends, take a moment to consider this. For those children, for disabled folks, for trans and queer folks, people of the global majority, and for each other, how will you show them, without many or no words at all, that love is at the center of this faith and this community, big C and little c? Amen. Like the words of the hymn, though we may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire and have not love, our words in vain, may you carry that love with every word. And without words, may you carry it with every movement, every breath, until we live into that promise of holding love at the center. Go now in peace.